I'd imagined that moment 100 different ways. In some versions, I'd cry. In others, I'd smile quietly while my family embraced me. But none of those daydreams ever prepared me for what actually happened. The promotion was official. I'd done it. After years of grinding through thankless shifts, surviving humiliating setbacks, and teaching myself skills long after everyone else had gone to bed, I had finally made it. Senior director. A seat at the table I had always been told I wasn't good enough to reach. The room applauded. My name echoed through the banquet hall. I stood there, in front of friends, colleagues, and yes, family. But just when I thought I was being celebrated, my stepmother's voice cut through the applause like a needle scratching across a vinyl record. "All thanks to that loan your father gave him," she said, clapping lazily with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Before we dive into the story, we'll love to thank you for your continued support to this channel. If you enjoy this story and stories like this, kindly subscribe and hit on the notification button so you don't miss any of our stories." Our shout out goes to Alicia from Salem, Oregon. We will love to hear from you also. Tell us where you're watching from in the comment section. We'll love to give you a shout out in our next video. Now let's begin. My stomach turned. Laughter from the table froze mid-breath. I turned toward her. She lifted her wine glass as if to toast, but the damage had been done. That one sentence shifted every face in the room. No one said anything, but I could feel it, doubt seeping into their expressions. Was my success really mine? Or just a hand-me-down favor funded by my father before he passed? I felt heat rise in my chest. My father had loaned me $5,000 when I was starting out, yes. But I had repaid that loan 2 years ago, with interest. He never mentioned it again, because he never believed in keeping score between family. Clearly, she did. As the evening wore on, I sat there smiling for photos and responding to congratulations with all the warmth I could fake. But inside, something snapped. Her words looped in my mind like a chant, all thanks to that loan. Not, "You earned this," or "We're proud of you." No. My achievement had been rewritten into a footnote in her twisted version of history. I looked around the table. My half-brother gave me a weak smile but said nothing. My uncle adjusted his tie and avoided my gaze. Even my mother's sister nodded as if to say, "Well, she's not wrong." I realized something cold and clear in that moment. I was sitting at a table of people who celebrated me not because they believed in me, but because they felt entitled to a piece of my success. I excused myself from the table halfway through dessert. Nobody stopped me. I stepped outside into the cold night, away from the laughter and champagne and polite lies. My chest ached, but not from sadness. It was rage, silent, calm, searing. I remembered the sleepless nights I had spent juggling 2 jobs while trying to build my resume. I remembered how I skipped meals to save on costs while living in a shoebox apartment. That so-called loan? It covered 1 month's rent and groceries back when I was 23 and had just moved to a new city. Everything else, every certificate, every connection, every opportunity, I built from scratch. And now, it had all been reduced to a charity case. Just because my stepmom couldn't stand the thought of me rising without her hand somewhere in the blueprint. I stood there in the parking lot, staring at my reflection in the glass door. I wasn't the boy they used to dismiss anymore. I had outgrown the stories they told about me. And yet, I had let them follow me here, into my triumph. That was the last time I brought my family to one of my victories. That night, something in me changed. Not the part that wanted to succeed. I'd already done that. But the part that still longed for their approval, their pride, their applause. I didn't need it anymore. Their silence after her comment spoke louder than any toast or hug ever could. I was done chasing applause from people who clapped only when it served their pride. After that night, I didn't say a word to my family for weeks. I let their messages pile up, most of them just checking in, pretending nothing had happened. But I knew better. That one sentence from my stepmother had been the truth behind all the politeness. And it wasn't just what she said, It was how the others reacted. Or rather, how they didn't. It exposed something I had tried for years to ignore. My success had never been mine in their eyes. It had always been theirs to explain, to claim, to reduce. And I wasn't going to let that continue. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by the things I had bought with my own hands. Nothing grand, but all earned. My promotion letter sat framed on the desk, and beside it, a copy of the old repayment slip I had saved from years ago, $500 transferred back to my father's account, long before he passed. I remembered the day I paid it off. He smiled, proud but calm, and said, "You didn't need to, son, but I respect that you did." He never mentioned the loan again. But when he died, my stepmother made sure it lived on in her narrative. She wasn't just a bitter woman. She was a careful storyteller, one who couldn't stand a chapter without her influence in it. Back when I was fresh out of college, that loan was a lifeline. Rent was late. I was eating 2 meals a day at most, and rejection emails were the only responses I ever got. I called my dad as a last resort. He transferred the money without hesitation, and I promised to pay it back. But what I didn't know at the time was that my stepmom saw it differently. To her, that loan was an investment, and like all investors, she expected ownership. She had always treated me like an outsider. I wasn't her son. I was a reminder of my father's past, of a woman he loved before her. She tolerated me in public, but behind closed doors, I could hear the resentment in how she spoke to my siblings about me. She never congratulated me on birthdays without mentioning how far I'd come thanks to your dad. She never introduced me without saying, "This is his father's son." Not her son. Not part of her family. Just an accessory she had no choice but to accept. I remember when I got my first job, she told me, "Make sure you don't mess this one up like the last time." There was always a jab, always a reminder that I wasn't allowed to shine too brightly without her permission. And sadly, I tolerated it. I told myself she was just old-fashioned, that she didn't mean harm. But the truth was, I didn't want to see the truth. I was still that kid hoping she'd see my worth. That maybe if I earned enough, she'd change. But now I knew she never would. And neither would the others. My half-brother, whom I helped through community college, once joked at a barbecue that I was Dad's charity case. My uncle? He once asked me if I was still doing that IT thing, even after I sent him the announcement of my company's global campaign that I led. These weren't slips of the tongue. These were carefully chosen reminders of where they believed I belonged. Below them, behind them, never beside. That night, after the dinner, I began to quietly pull away. I stopped answering calls. I politely declined family gatherings. I removed them from my social media, blocked them from seeing my promotions, my travels, my new ventures. If they wanted a version of me they could control, they could keep it. But they wouldn't have access to the man I was becoming now. I began to document everything. My father's will, the repayment slip, screenshots of text conversations from years ago when I begged for help and was met with cold silence. Not to seek revenge, but to protect my truth. Because I realized something deeper. Some people will try to erase your journey so they can rewrite it in their favor. And if you let them, your story will be told without your voice. I wasn't going to let that happen. I had fought too hard, broken too many ceilings, and carried too much alone to let them take the credit now. No more rewriting my story. No more borrowed applause. 3 years passed after that dinner party, and I lived every one of them on my own terms. I traveled to countries I once only saw in magazines. I launched 2 tech consulting branches in Europe. I paid off my condo and upgraded to a property that overlooked the city skyline. And through it all, I never once reached back out to them. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. The boy who once begged to be seen had grown into a man who no longer needed the validation of people who only clapped when they could take the credit. Still, life has a funny way of circling back. One cold morning, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't saved, but one I instantly recognized. My half-brother. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. Hey, listen, things at home are bad. The family business took a hit. We're in deep. Mom said we should reach out. She's hoping maybe you can help. You've always been good with money. His voice trailed off like even he wasn't convinced by his own pitch. I didn't interrupt him. I let him speak. I let him spin their story of bad investments, market crashes, staff layoffs. All the things that now made me useful. When he finally paused, waiting for my reply, I took a long breath. Not because I needed time to think, but because I wanted him to feel the silence. The weight of everything they had ignored, twisted, erased. Then I answered in a calm, even tone. I don't give loans. Only lessons. He chuckled nervously, trying to make light of it. Come on, man. You know this isn't about a loan. It's family. Family. That word again. The same word they threw at me when it suited them, but never when it required effort, respect, or love. I asked him where that family was when I was couch surfing to afford my first business suit. Where they were when I spent Christmases alone because I wasn't part of the inner circle. Where they were when I got that promotion, and their only reaction was to reduce it to a footnote in my father's memory. His voice turned defensive, but I didn't let him finish. I told him that respect isn't something you request only in crisis. It's something you give in consistency. And they never did. 2 weeks later, I got another call, this time from my stepmother. I answered out of curiosity. She started by pretending nothing ever happened. She asked how I was, told me she missed my presence at family dinners. Then, like clockwork, she brought up the business again. Your father would have wanted you to support the family legacy, she said. That was the final straw. I reminded her, as politely as I could, that my father supported me with no strings attached. And if she really believed in legacy, she would have honored that by treating me with dignity, not as a burden or a beneficiary of some debt. I ended the call by saying something I had wanted to say for years. You don't get to write my story just because you were in the background. I'm the author now. They stopped calling after that. I don't know what happened to the family business. I don't care. I found peace in the silence. I found purpose in knowing that I don't owe anyone an explanation for how far I've come. I earned it. I bled for it. And I protected it. Now, when people ask me about my success, I don't mention the loan. I talk about the nights I cried alone, the friends who became family, the bosses who mentored me, and the moments I almost gave up but didn't. That's my story. No one else's. And if there's one lesson I've learned, it's this. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's no longer needing their approval at all. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own strength, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. This isn't just a story. It's a reminder. You are allowed to outgrow the people who never believed in you. And when you do, clap for yourself. You've earned it. See you soon in the next story.